actually can perform the modeling, what are the ways in which they can actually we can actually use this modeling tools to perform the modeling and all. So today we are going to actually find and see how to perform the modeling and get the hands-on with this particular tools. Okay, so the first thing, so remember that any protein, so first of all, if you have a particular protein, then you actually need to know about that particular protein's secondary structures, right? So there are actually several web servers and tools available which can actually allow you and help you to predict the nature or the interacting type of your molecule, or the molecule that, if you suppose you have a molecule, okay, so will that particular molecule, can that particular molecule be actually homology modeled or not? Because to have a modeling, a molecule or a protein must have certain characteristics, like it must possess the alpha helix nature, it must have the random coil nature, it must have the beta sheets. So what are these criteria and how you can predict it? Okay, and sometimes it is also required you to predict this the detailed 3D model of the structure, or in other case you only need the general information that which residues are participating in that particular helix formation or that beta sheet formation. Okay, so in this manner, so first we're going to talk about a particular web server, that is JFred. Okay, so this is one of the server that actually allows you to predict the secondary structure of a molecule. So if you simply click that particular link, it's going to open up and you're going to find out this particular server. So this is the application or the main page that you have. So the basis is very simple. All you have to do is simply upload the protein sequence in this particular blank box, only the protein sequence. Now here already there is an example sequence is given there, so you can obviously click this particular simply paste your sequence in one letter code. Make sure you are not uploading the FASTA format, you are uploading only the protein sequence in a one letter code. Okay, so as you upload your protein sequence in the one letter code, then what you have to do, simply click on this make prediction, that's all. And now it is going to try to find out the whether your protein has any similarity with other proteins in other databases or not. Now what kind of other databases do we have? Now remember, we talked about that there are certain protein databases, right? And that actually houses many information or all information about a particular proteins, right? So all the proteins whose structures are solved, they are actually stored in that particular database. So it is going to go into that particular database and try to find out the proteins which have similar structure. Now in this particular case, it found out that yes, this particular molecule has some similarity with these proteins, the ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase, and obviously all of them are the ribulose bisphosphate that belongs to different species of plants and all. Okay, so obviously it's going to say that this is your protein has similarity with this particular protein. So do you want to get the idea from this protein, or do you need to further find out your protein's characteristics? Now if your protein is a homologue of other protein, then it is whose structure is solved, then they are actually bound to find the similarities thereon. But if they don't find that particular connections, what we have to do, we have to find out on our own. So now what you have to do, simply click on this continue button. Let me send this to Vaishnavi. Just click on this particular link. Okay, it's going to open up a server that will allow us to predict the secondary structure. So it's going to take certain time to visualize the data, and after that you get this particular result. So now let's explain this particular result and what's and what. So this is the basic thing of your result. Okay, this is the basic summary. So what it is predicting, it is predicting that this is your protein sequence, this MVQWP is the protein sequence, and if it is predicting whether which part of amino acid has which structure. Now this green arrow, they indicate that these are a alpha or these are a part of beta sheet. This amino acid under which you get to see the green arrow are a part of beta sheet, whereas this red tube indicates the alpha helix nature. So according to the server, they are predicting that This amino acid KFET, this stretch participates in the beta sheet formation, whereas this stretch starting from valine till this particular domain called arginine, this actually is a part of alpha helix. Okay, and after that again you can see that this BP, this particular 6 stretch, is again a part of beta sheet. Okay, and then it goes on, and you can see, find out the entire structure like that. So all these are structured like that. Okay, but there is one thing. What are all these Janet, Sol 5, Sol 0? What are these? These are the different algorithms that actually predicts your structure. So in this particular server, they are not predicting your structure with a single algorithm. Rather, they are using multiple algorithms to predict your structure. Okay, multiple algorithm, and all these algorithms, they are actually different, and they are predicting whether your molecule is a part of this particular secondary structure or not. Okay, so now you get to see that there are several numbers in this particular case, 7, 8, 9, right? Just under individual amino acid, they have a unique number, 8, 5, 3, 5, 6, 6, 7, 2, 3, 1, random number. Now can anyone say, and you can see that these numbers are actually varying from 0 to 9, the lowest being this 0 and the highest being the 9. So now can anyone say what this number stands for? What do you think these numbers are? These numbers actually describe the hydrophilicity of your molecule or the solvent accessibility of your amino acid. Now, if a molecule is M, that means this methionine, it has a solvent accessibility score of 8. That means it is actually present at the, it is actually highly it can interact with solvent. This particular amino acid is easily accessible by solvent. The higher the score, the more better the solvent accessibility. Whereas the lower the score, the lesser is the solvent accessibility. So you get to see that is 1. 1 means this particular amino acid, this threonine, this has a score of 1. That means there is no water. No water is present at that particular location. This molecule is not accessible by solvent molecule. But what does this data indicate? If I tell you this amino acid is highly solvent accessible, so what you can predict from this statement? I mean, what can you conclude? What can you conclude? Just anything, simply talk about anything. Any idea? No idea. Nothing. See, the solvent accessibility means whether your particular amino acid is accessible by solvent molecule or water. Now, simply think of, suppose you have a protein. In your protein, there are few amino acids that are buried inside. There are few amino acids that are buried deep inside, the hydrophobic amino acids, whereas there are few amino acids that will be present at the surface of the molecule, that will present at the surface at the topology. Now, the amino acids that are present at the surface, they are bound to interact with certain other solvents because they are at the surface. So they are obviously going to make a connection with the water molecules or the solvent molecules, right? Now in our body, the solvent is actually the water molecules, right? Whereas the deeply buried amino acid, can they access water molecule? For example, suppose you have your liver. Now if I say when you regularly take a bath, which organ gets in direct contact with the water? Only the skin. Only the skin comes in direct contact with the water, while the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, they are never coming in contact with the water because they are buried inside. Whereas my skin, as it is in my surface, it is interacting with a solvent molecule, and that's what these numbers indicate. Okay, now one more thing. If that is the case, why do we need to know about the solvent accessibility? What is the utility in knowing solvent accessibility? So by seeing the solvent accessibility, I can predict which amino acids are at the surface and which amino acids are deeply buried inside. Okay. Obviously the amino acid at 9 is the amino, sorry, actually I spoke it wrong. 0 means it is most accessible by water, whereas 9 means it is buried deep inside. Okay, just vice versa what I have told you. Now, how will this particular knowledge help me? How will this particular information help me in any way? Can you simply say a way in which this particular information will help me? Come on, just any answer. I'm not here to give you marks. I'm not here to judge you. Simply, I just need to understand that. I just need to see your brain's active or not. Because if you simply use your brain, you are going to bound to come with some answer.
Sorry, sir. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, I'm repeating it that when you see this particular residues, the numbers as I've told you that indicate the solvent accessibility of your amino acid. So some amino acid they have higher solvent accessibility, but while some amino which are deeply buried inside, they are not solvent accessible. Okay. So in this particular context, I can easily conclude that which amino acid are present at the surface of the protein and which amino acid are buried inside. But how will this knowledge help me? How will this knowledge help me? That's the question.
So, sir, if we making a drug, it will help me to how a drug will interact with the surface protein in the drug buried or not.
Excellent. Not how, but which
So that the
amino
process.
acid.
Yes, sir. Which amino
Which
acid
amino
interaction?
acids? Yes, absolutely. Because obviously, if I design a drug, I can't allow my drug to bind to the amino acid which are deeply buried inside. As I've told you, there are few proteins for which there are no known structure. There are no known structure. So if a particular protein has no known structure, there is no way of knowing whether that particular protein, where does particular amino acid lies, or what is the binding pocket, which amino acid are at the binding pocket. So what I will do, I will try to select the amino acid that are present at the surface of the molecule. Because if I by chance select this residue, suppose I find out that this is a very good residue, so I select this particular residue, LLKW. Okay, I select this particular 4 residue, LLKW, KQ. But I see that they are not solvent accessible. They are buried inside. So if I develop and design a ligand targeting this amino acid, so that they are going to come and it's going to come and bind to these amino acids, and I find out that this amino acid deeply buried inside. So obviously, in actual scenario, the drug molecule will fail to find these residues and it is not going to bind to your target. Okay, so that's why these informations are necessary to see what amino acid is present at the target, because those amino acid that are present at the surface, those are the one that will actually interact with other proteins or interact with the drug molecules or interact with the DNA if that molecule is a transcription factor. Okay, so that is why we need to understand about this solvent accessibility. So now let's see the more results. So this is actually a summary. Okay, so let's click on this view full results. So let's see what's the full result. So this is the full result that you have given. So what is this full result? So first of all, it says the queried protein. It says that this is your queried protein, and then it predicts what are the other proteins or the homologue of your molecule that are present in different other species. So this is the first molecule that it has found out. Okay, that is similar to this particular queried protein, but it is sometimes different. There are certain mutations. What are the mutations? See, at the second residue, I have glutamine, I have Q, I have glutamine, whereas in case of the second protein, instead of glutamine I have lysine. So this is one of the mutation. This is another mutation. Instead of isoleucine I have proline. A third mutation, instead of glutamic acid we have isoleucine, and similarly like that. This entire stretch is similar. See, this entire stretch is actually similar. This entire stretch is similar, but you are going to come across certain, there is a one difference. Another difference is that at the end, at the C terminal end, instead of cysteine I have valine. So if you look at it, you're going to get the idea that between these two proteins, the C terminus is absolutely or more or less conserved. This C terminal, this particular C terminal end is more or less conserved. See, This particular part is more or less conserved. Majorly the mutations are present at the N-terminal end. Why? See, the second residue is different, the third, this fifth residue is different. Then we have, again, there is a difference at this particular domain. So the mutations are majorly present at the N-terminal domain. Whereas the C-terminal domain is actually, apart from the last amino acid, the rest of the part is exactly the same. So this actually gives us an idea that this entire stretch must be functionally important. The C-terminal end of this protein must be functionally important. It might, if it is an enzyme, then it might be the active site. It might be the allostatic site. It might be the major structural site, and that's why it doesn't contain any mutation. Because if any mutation crops up into the functional domain, that makes the protein unstable, that makes the protein functionless. So in that particular case, the protein is not going to work and it might be fatal. So any mutation in that particular protein or that particular part is going to, and if it is fatal, that particular organism is going to die. It is not going to survive. So it is not environmentally or hereditary or evolutionary stable mutation. Understand? So these are the different information that we can gather. And if you try to look at all the other proteins, see, there are a number of mutations. Like in this particular case, the last amino acid is not there. So see, the rest of the part is, see, the rest of the part starting from P, VIA, this particular part is also mostly similar. This particular C-terminal is mostly similar, apart from the last two amino acid, and this gives an indication that the C-terminal has something to do with the functionality of this particular protein, whereas the last two amino acids are not that important part, and that is why it is easy to replace those amino acids, but not the conserved domain. Now in this particular case, I would like to say that there are two types of sequence. One is the consensus sequence, another is the conserved sequence. Now, can anyone tell me the difference or the definition of these two sequences? The consensus or the conserved? I think this is a very easy answer. Conserved and consensus sequence. What do you think? What does the word conserved means? So if I say a conserved sequence, what do I mean? Just take it literally. Take it literally.
So similar sequences between different species.
Very good. So Venus is right. He is saying that a similar sequence. Yes. Now, conserved doesn't mean actually similar. It means exactly the same. So what is the difference between similar and same? In similar, so if a particular residue is similar, for example, you have a protein, and in that particular protein you have a arginine at an active site. Now, if there is a mutation and that mutation creates or changes the arginine to lysine. So if this kind of mutation occurs, the active site is not going to get hampered. Why? Because the mutation brought a similar amino acid. Because both lysine and arginine are mostly structurally similar. They also have similar chemical characteristics. They both are positively charged amino acid, and they are also structurally look-alike. So it is a similar molecule, so that is not going to create a problem at that particular location. But in conserved sequence, I mean that particular sequence is never going to change. It is going to be as it is. It will not have any similar sequence. It will have the exact sequence. Because if it is a very important part of the protein, then any minute mutation can also cause a havoc at that particular domain. It might make the protein unstable, and if that particular protein, and if it's a very important protein, and if it gets unstable, then it might be fatal for your system. It might be fatal for that particular organism. Whereas, so these are the conserved sequence. So if you find a particular region that is highly conserved among various species, you can be 100% sure that particular portion has something to do with the either the regulation or it must be the functional domain of the particular protein. Whereas, so this is the conserved sequence. Okay, the sequence that is highly similar, it will be conserved in different species. as we can see with this particular case here, all the sequence, this particular stretch is highly conserved. See, it is highly conserved. There is no any kind of mutations are not there. But in case of this particular sequence, in this particular N-terminal end, I find many mutations on top. So what is a consensus sequence now? What's a consensus sequence? The consensus sequence means that if that particular sequence is a similar sequence. Similar means, now can anyone of you say a consensus sequence in our body? Example of a consensus sequence in our body, a very well known example, and I am 100% sure you have all read about it. You have all read about it.
Sir, Tata sequence.
Tata sequence. Absolutely. Very good. You are a brilliant boy. Yes, the Tata box. The Tata box is the consensus sequence. Not only Tata box, the minus, there are two regions, minus 10 and minus 35. Both are consensus sequence. So what does that mean? Now, as Vinith told, the Tata box was a sequence of Tata box TA-TA-AT. But it doesn't mean that the sequence in Vinith's genome is also TA-TA-AT. The sequence in Vaishnavi's is also TA-TA-AT. The sequence in Dibita's is also TA-TA-AT. No, not that. The sequence in Vinith might be TA-TA-TA. The sequence in Vaishnavi might be TA-AT-AT. The sequence in Dibita might be AT-TT-AT. It might be like that. And in my case, it would be TA-AA-TT. So we see that if you simply cross-check with various different species, you're going to find that it is not at all same. There are differences. But why do we call it TA-TA-AT? Because maximum people, it has been found that maximum people have T at the first location, they have A at the second location, T again at the third location, and so on and so on. So that means in most of the cases, they generally have sequence similar to TA-TA-AT. But it is not a 100% fact that they have to have TA-TA-AT. No, they might have certain modifications, but in average, the sequence is mostly TA-TA-AT because T is mostly the first sequence. So in case of Vinith, it might be T, T, A, T, T, T. In my case, it might be T, A, T, T, A, T. Okay, so we see that the first sequence is mostly T in everyone's. The second sequence is A in most of the cases. So that's how the consensus sequence is drawn. We say that this is the average. So consensus means this is the average sequence that everybody in this particular planet have. They might, and average means what? Average means that they have slightly different, but it is close to the value. That is close to the value. Okay, so that's what we can also predict from this particular sequence alignment. They have aligned it and they're showing you the region. For example, in this particular case, there are two major mutations. There is a deletion mutation in this particular case. Okay, so that's what we can actually gather and infer from this particular website. Okay, and if you again scroll down a lot, so see, these are the thing actually starts with the highest or the most sequence similarity, and as you come down, the similarity actually decreases until you have a protein in which the major portions are either deleted or the major portions are either mutated. Okay, but there are going to be certain areas that are not going to be deleted or mutated. For example, see in this particular location, the GID PKA, this particular sequence is not changing at all. This particular sequence is not changing at all. Okay, because that is more or less similar. Okay, and if you simply come down at the end, this is going to give you the detail of this particular structure. Now, as I have told you, there are multiple algorithms that predicts the secondary structure of your particular protein. So according to the JNet algorithm, it predicts that this KFET, these are a part of alpha helix. The E stands for beta sheet. The E stands for beta sheet. The H stands for helix. So according to this particular JNet algorithm, it is predicting that this particular stretch is a part of beta sheet. This particular is a part of this particular stretch, starting from arginine till valine. This is a part of alpha helix, while this stretch is a part of beta sheet, and so on, like that. Again, the JHMM is also predicting that yes, this part is a part of beta sheet, but it is saying that this beta sheet also encompasses the leucine. Okay, and it is predicting that this particular stretch also has helix. Now see, in this particular case, all the three algorithms are predicting that this part is a helix in nature. Now when they are predicting with such a surety and all the three algorithms are predicting the same thing, then you can actually be, it is a higher possibility, it is a very good possibility that this stretch has the helix tendency, because all the three algorithms are predicting it. See, in case of this particular stretch, the third algorithm is not predicting a beta sheet, so it might be that it is not accurately correct, but since all three are predicting, it is. So this stretch, and there is no variation, in case of this particular, see, it is predicting the 4 amino acid, the JHMM is predicting 5 amino acid. The same thing is coming for this particular stretch also. Okay, so we can simply close your eye and simply say that yes, this particular stretch has the alpha helix nature. Again, then you have a algorithm to calculate the coiling, random coiling, and it calculates that this particular is a portion of this, it is a random coiled structure. Whereas lastly you have the solvent accessibility of your molecule, and that predicts the entire solvent accessibility of this particular every amino acid. Okay, every amino acid, right? And if you simply come down, in this particular case, you see all the things are actually mentioned and what is what. For example, you see what's is mentioning, it is saying that this JNet is what, this JNet is the final secondary structure prediction for query. This is a final secondary structure prediction for query, whereas the JHM is the JNet homology modeling profile prediction. So they are predicting that according to the homology modeling, this part is going to have the alpha helix nature and like that. So this lupus is a coil prediction. Okay, and see, in this particular case you find it is small c. What it is saying, what does small c mean? Small c means that this particular stretch has the tendency to be a coil, but what's the tendency, what's the percentage? There's a 50 to 90% probability that this particular stretch will be a coiled structure. Had it been a capital T, capital C, it would mean that they have a greater than 90% probability to become a coil. So in your protein, if you find that it is a capital C, then you know that yes, this part is a random coil, because there are 90% higher probability. Whereas this particular thing, this solvent accessibility is calculated by this JNetRel, and since JNetRel is the reliability of the prediction accuracy, it ranges from 0 to 9. Okay, the bigger the better. Okay, so that's how you get to see the molecule that are better or not. Okay, using this particular entire result. Again, you can also view the simplified result. If you simply click on simplified result, it's only going to show you the secondary structure, because this is what we need to see, only the secondary structure. So it is not going to show you the detailed analysis like this. It's only going to show you the secondary structure, that's all. And you can also download this result, and suppose if you are performing homology modeling and all, and you need to quantify that whether your molecule is a part of your the model that you have developed, if it can form a helix or not, and you need some concluding remarks, and obviously you need to show the data, right, that this is a part of helix and how have you calculated it. So you can download the result in PDF. Simply click it and it's going to get downloaded in the website, and you can present that particular PDF in your thesis or something like that. Okay, now see, in this particular server we were actually able to calculate or predict the secondary structure of your molecule we could only guess the structure. We can't see the 3D volume, we can't see the 3D structure. We could only guess the amino acid that are present and that could achieve what kind of structures and all. We can only predict. We are not seeing the 3D model. So there are also servers that can actually allow you to help to get the idea of the 3D models. Okay, so that's what we need to see. Now before I move on to that particular section, there are few other things, the database that we need to see. So why do we need to know about the database? Because I'm going to discuss that in a little bit of time. So this is the first database that we are going to discuss today. Let me send it to you. Have I discussed the UniProt? Have I discussed UniProt before? I think no. Okay, your silence means no. So see, this particular database is the protein database. This actually has all the information about a particular protein, So suppose you have select this UniProt KB and then simply type in the name of the protein that you want to find out. suppose I need to find out about the VEGF protein. Okay, so I will simply click on VEGF-A, and now it is going to show you all the results of the VEGF protein. So first you get the VEGF-A that belongs to human, that belongs to Homo sapiens. Next you get to see the VEGF-A protein of mouse, of Mus musculus. Then you get to see the VEGF-A of rat, the Rattus norvegicus. The VEGF-A of Cotonyx japonica. Like that you get to see the VEGF of different species, all the different species. But we are interested about finding out about this particular VEGF of human because I work with cancer. Now if you are working with Drosophila, then you have to select the VEGF of Drosophila because you are using Drosophila. If your model is rat model, then you have to select the VEGF of rat model, like that. Okay, so how to find out? Simply click on this entry model. Simply click on this particular entry. See, there is an entry option here. Click on this particular entry and it's going to open up the VEGF-A of human. Okay, now just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, okay? Yes, okay. So now if you click on it, see, it's going to open up this entire thing. So what are the information that you get? First of all, you get to see the protein name, the VEGF-A protein. Okay, the gene that it belongs to, the organism that you have, and the status. The status is that it is reviewed. That means this particular protein has been validated at protein level. Every information about this particular protein has been validated. People have been able to purify and locate this particular protein and perform experiment with it. So next you get to see the function of this particular protein. So since this particular protein is actually involved in angiogenesis, so it is a part of it's one of the oncogene. Okay, and as you can see that it is a growth factor that is active in angiogenesis, vasculogenesis, endothelial cell growth, and everything that it actually performs with other receptors with which binds to, and what does it do, and also other details function. And next you get to see the gene ontology result, that is the molecular function. Now what is molecular function? Molecular function is what this particular protein actually does in your body. What's the role of that particular protein? So the role is that it is actually a chemoattractant. It has some cytokine activity. So it is this molecule also has a growth factor activity. So that is the molecular function of this particular molecule. For example, suppose if someone asks, what is your function? So if you are, so in your school, you might have a principal, you might have a class teacher, you have clerks and all. So the function of your principal is to manage and everything in your school, manage everything in your school. And some of them have some pretty basic and divided work. For example, the clerk, what does the clerk do? He actually rings the bell, or he or she actually takes part in the office work. They try to find out they take the signature, they make the attendance sheet, all these are the molecular function, okay, that the particular protein has. And next you get to see the biological process. I mean, this is the function of the molecule, but what is its implication in terms of the biology? How does it affect the biology? Now, if this particular molecule has a growth factor activity, then the biological process is obviously cellular growth, right? So one of the things is obviously cellular growth. And how does it help? Now it doesn't help, it helps in cellular growth by taking part in angiogenesis. Okay, so next you get to see that it has cell maturation. Okay, cellular growth means cell maturation, right? And like that, these are all the different biological process of this particular molecule. Like it helps in kidney development, in lactation, in lung development, lymph vessel morphogenesis. The lung development will obviously occur because that's what the cell does. For a molecule to become mature, it has to develop, right? So these are all the functions that this particular molecule plays, and these are the, so some of them are repetitions, but that's how the keywords are actually divided. That's how the keywords are actually divided, so that you get to know. Now next you come and you get to see the names and taxonomy section. And the name and taxonomy section, what you have the whole taxonomic lineage of this particular protein. You have the eukaryota, metazoa, chordata, craniata, vertebrata, histolymi, and then ultimately it comes and all falls down to your Homo sapiens. Okay, that's the thing. Now it's going to be exciting for the taxonomist. Okay, several people work with the taxonomy, right? And although it's a very boring job, but yes, people are there who are interested. They find something interesting in this particular section and they work with it. Okay. Now if you come down, it gives you a general idea of the subcellular localization of this particular protein. Now and you see where this particular protein localized. So it is saying that it is an extracellular region, or it is a secreted protein. That means this particular protein is not present inside the cell. Obviously, it's a growth factor. The growth factors are obviously secreted, and these are the annotation that it is secreted. And who has the proof? These three are the publication that actually proves that this molecule is actually a secreted protein. There are multiple papers regarding this thing, but these are the main papers. So you can simply click on this particular paper. You can simply save the particular paper and search it in the Google to know more about how they found out that this particular protein is a secreted protein. So, okay. Now, I'm going to ask you one question. Suppose I'm giving you two proteins. One of the protein, a secreted protein, another protein, a non-secreted protein. Simply by taking a look at the sequence, how can you distinguish between these two proteins? How would you know which protein is secreted outside and which protein is not? Any answer? Come on. Simply by taking a look into the protein sequence, you know nothing about the protein structure or something. You are only taking a look into this protein sequence. Okay. Biological activity. Can you elaborate, Dibita? Biological clock time. No. I want to ask you that how would you make sure that your molecule is actually a secreted protein? For example, I simply give you two proteins and I ask that which of the molecule will be secreted protein, protein A or protein B, and you only have the sequence of your protein. So only by looking at the sequence, how would you deduce whether that particular protein will stay inside the cell or it will be secreted by the cell outside? Simply by taking a look into the sequence, how could you imagine or how could you understand that?
Certain solubility number which we discussed last.
Solubility, no. Solubility will simply say that if the amino acid is present, can be present on the surface or not. Now, see, in case of blood or your cytoplasm, they have similar chemical composition. So even if it is present in the cytoplasm, it has to show the same activity. If it is outside in the blood, it will show same activity. Okay, because our body composition is exactly the same. We can know about the secreted protein or not by simply seeing the signal peptide. Any protein that is meant for secretion, they have a signal peptide at their end terminus. And while the protein sorting, remember, and I think you know, proteins are generally made in the endoplasmic reticulum, right? And from there the proteins are sorted. The proteins that belongs to cell membrane are actually pushed to cell membrane. The proteins that are made for the transcription factor, they are meant to be staying inside the nucleus. So they actually go and move into the nucleus. So the proteins are sorted, and this sorting is done by the Golgi channels, right? The Golgi vacuoles. The sorting is done. Now at that junction, how would the vacuole know whether the protein needs to be secreted outside or should be kept in cytoplasm? By simply checking a signal peptide. If there is the signal peptide is generally 26 or 21 amino acid long. So if any protein contains the signal peptide, they are actually generally sent to the cell membrane. And in the cell membrane there is an option, there is a protein that can actually understand and binds to the signal peptide. So they are going to bind to signal peptide and push the other part outside the cell, and they are going to cut the signal peptide. So the signal peptide only stays with the protein till cell membrane, and while the proteins which doesn't have a signal peptide, they are actually released inside. They are released inside the cytoplasm. They are not taken into the cell membrane. Understand? So that's how we get to see the differences. So therefore, if you simply given a particular protein, any signal peptide, they have similar sequence. They have similar sequence. They have a same sequence, right? And that's why if you simply find out the signal peptide is present at the N-terminus end of the particular protein, you know that yes, this protein is a secreted protein. Now the next section deals with the pathology of your molecule. That means with what disease is your molecule connected to? If it is connected to diabetes, is it connected to cancer? Is it connected to other disease any kind of diseases might be, right? It might be a lifestyle disease, it might be any kind of genetic disease and all. So this actually gives you the idea. For example, this particular case, it says that this is actually it actually involved with diabetes as well. It is also involved with cancer, and that's a very well known fact. So that's what is going to discuss and show. And after that you get to see the post-translational modification. Now in this respect, I would like to show you one more thing. I'm just showing you two proteins just for comparing. Okay. Yes. So okay, so the first thing that you have is a post-translational modification. So that means the modifications that generally takes place in the protein after it has been translated, right? You know about post-translational modifications, right? And without post-translational modifications, some protein are not activated. So the activity of the protein simply depends upon the post-translational modifications. Okay. So what kind of modifications takes place? See, the first is the signal peptide. The molecule or the peptide that comes from 1 to 26 is present as a signal peptide. So that gets cut off. That gets cut off, and that is the processing, first processing. So see, the main chain starts from 27th amino acid till 232 amino acid. Why? Because the first part is actually chopped off. And what are the other modifications? It actually has several interchain disulfide bond. And between what? Between the 52nd and 94th. The 52nd and 94th amino acid, they are actually connected by a disulfide bond. So it is a intra-chain disulfide bond. Whereas the molecule or the cysteine at 77th position, it takes part in the interchain. Sometimes there are more than one chain of a particular protein. So intra-chain means bonding of with the same kind of chain, with a similar chain. Whereas interchain means binding with different proteins. Okay. So this 77th amino acid is actually a part of interchain disulfide bond. Whereas 83rd and 128, they interact with one another to form a intrachain disulfide bond. Okay, so these are the post-translational modification that takes place in this particular protein. But that's not the case with every protein. So this is a different protein. A nucleolin protein is a different protein. Now this particular protein is not a secreted protein, and that's why you see it doesn't have any signal peptide. So what are the modification? The initiator methionine is removed, and I think you all know the initiator methionine is actually removed in every protein, right? It is removed in most of the protein, and that is why it is not a very important goal. It is not a very important role. Okay. And after that, what we have? We have the next modification as that the 9th residue is actually the lysine. It actually gets acetylated at the N6th position, and therefore the 9th position lysine is actually getting acetyl lysine. The 15th Lysine also gets acetylated at N6th position, but the 28th serine gets phosphorylated, the 34th, 44th. So these are the kind of modifications that generally takes place. You can see the different kind of modifications: phosphorylation, acetylation, glycosylation, right? So all these different kind of modifications takes place. In some proteins the modifications are much more, in some proteins the modification is much less. Okay, so if you simply again come down, it's going to show you the expression pattern, where in which particular gland or which particular organism this particular VEGF is highly expressed. Okay, so you get to say that this particular, in case of your VEGF, now sometimes a particular protein has multiple isoforms. Now can anyone say why a particular protein has multiple isoform? Why a particular protein has multiple isoform? Any idea? And what are isoforms actually? First, just simply tell me what are isoforms. What are isoforms? Come on. Any answer? Isoform means same protein but different sequence. But why different sequence? Because of alternative splicing. In our case of humans, in case of eukaryotes, there is no one gene, one protein theory. A particular mRNA undergoes multiple splicing, and from one protein or one mRNA you can have multiple protein. You can have protein A, protein B, protein C, all with different sequences that are formed by this. What? That are formed by this alternative splicing, right? So that's why you get to see different isoforms. So see, in this particular case, the isoform 189, IC 165 and 121 are widely expressed, whereas 206, 145 are not widely expressed. Okay, and they have a higher expression in the pituitary tumors as compared to the pituitary gland. So this, in this particular case, the particular protein is highly expressed. And next you get to see the interaction of this protein. What is interaction? That means with what other proteins does this molecule interacting to? So in this particular case, you see that this particular protein actually interacts with, now any protein, to show its activity, it must interact with other protein, right? It must make a complex, it must interact with other proteins. So in this particular case, the nucleolin interacts with AICDA, it interacts with APTX, and this particular protein or their interaction with APTX is actually followed by this particular paper. The paper ID is given. So if you click on it, this is the protein, the apoptosis in a novel protein that proteins against genotoxic stress. So if you read this protein, this particular paper discusses about the interaction of APTX with MEEK. Similarly, you have this is a nucleolin protein. You have the interaction with CYQBP. These are the different protein with which it actually interacts. So why this part is important? Because suppose you have a protein, and the protein, you are simply inhibiting that protein. You are deleting the protein. So if you inhibit that particular protein, and if you stop that protein from synthesis, then it is not going to bind to these proteins, and if it is not binding to these proteins, it might have any other implications on your body, because each protein has a different function. You don't know what is the utility or function of your protein binding to this LRRC34. You don't know. So it might have some fatal conditions, it might be fatal for you. So you have to cross check everything, and you get to know the proteins also with which it is interacting to. Okay, and after that, if you come down, you get to see the structure of the protein. You get to see the structure of this particular protein. So there are simply three structures: the 2FC8, the 2FC9, the 2KRR, and they are all solved by NMR spectroscopy method. They are all solved by NMR spectroscopy method. Now again, if you come down, you get to see the other alternatives like this family domain. You get to see the let me talk about this isoform. Now see, in this particular case, you have this is the structure of the VEGF protein. Now see, there are multiple Remember I told that they have interchain hydrogen disulfide bond formation, interchain disulfide bond 77 and 86 that are taking interchain. And why? Because this is a multiple subunit protein. See, there are so many different structures, there are so many different, all the different colors indicate a different chain, all the different colors indicate a different chain. Okay, so that's what you can actually see, that these structures are solved by X-ray. This is also another structure solved by X-ray, whereas these are the structures solved by NMR. So if you click on the NMR structure, it's going to load up the NMR structure like this. This is the NMR structure. Now again, if you click on X-ray, it's going to load up the X-ray structure. This is another structure. Okay, so like that you get to see the structure and all. And if you simply come down more, you get to see the main important thing, and that is the sequence of the protein. So this is the isoform VGF206 is the major protein, and this is the sequence starting from MN, FL, SH, W. So this is where we get to see the protein sequence. But sometimes we need the FASTA sequence. How to get it? See, there's an option called FASTA. If you click it, it's going to open up the entire sequence in FASTA format. So what is FASTA format? The FASTA format, as you can see, it starts with a greater than sign, and then you simply name your protein. All you have to do is get the name of protein, and from the next line you have the one letter code of your protein. So this is the FASTA format. Okay, sometimes the FASTA format is required, so you have to copy everything, or sometimes only the sequence is required, so you have to copy this. So suppose I need to find out about a particular protein, so you have to find out the sequence from this particular database and then go to the JPRED and then paste your sequence here and then click on make prediction. So now it's going to start doing this job with this particular new protein. So from this is where you have to generate and gather the sequence. Okay, so this is the most important thing. Okay, so it is actually starting, but I don't want to see it, I have already discussed it. Okay, so and if you need to go back, simply click on back button and you can be back at that particular unique site and server. Okay, and after that you can also see the, just a minute. Oh, so these are the different isoform of this particular protein. Okay, and it also discusses all the other isoforms. So this is the wild type protein. So what is the other isoform? The isoform VJ189. It is also other isoform, but how it is different? See, the residue from 166 to 182 is missing. So that means this particular residue, this is 168. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Starting from here till 188. So this particular stretch is missing. So this is the other isoform. Then you have another isoform, and this particular isoform is 160 to 182 is missing. Whereas the isoform VJ165, this entire stretch is missing from 140 to 182, and the 141th lysine is mutated to asparagine. The N stands for asparagine, so it has been mutated from lysine to asparagine. Again, about this other isoform, similar kind of mutation, lysine to asparagine, and the 215th alanine is actually mutated to methionine, whereas these two segments are missing. So like that you also get to see all the other isoforms, the different isoform of your protein. You can see all under this particular section at this particular, but this is the server, right? So that's how you can actually use this server. So that's how the main important thing is you have to retrieve the sequence, and that's how you retrieve the whole sequence of your protein simply by key. So this is the other protein, and if you click on FASTA, you can download the entire structure or the sequence of this particular protein. Okay, understand? So now once we are done with the protein, now what we have to do, we have to predict the 3D model of the protein, right? The 3D model. So for 3D model, we are going to check out this server. So this is one of the server and by which we can actually predict the 3D model of the protein. Now in this particular case, what happened? In earlier JPRED, we predicted the secondary structure, only the 2D secondary structure, but now we are actually into a server where we could actually produce and protect and imitate the 3D structure of your protein. So this is one of the raw beta server. Okay, so this raw beta server is actually developed by certain people, the Rosetta Lab, and they actually, it's a Baker lab. The Baker is a scientist. It has been developed by Baker's lab, and they actually maintain this particular server. And the importance of the server is this is a very absolute accurate server, and this is continuously evaluated by this Cameo. That means this is a branch that actually governs all the modeling. So as suppose it also develops and models and updates their algorithm. So that is why if any new information comes pertaining to the sequence of a protein, that information is also fed into that algorithm, and then the algorithm is actually updated. That is why you are going to get only the best possible structures from this particular web server. So how to use it? It's very simple. All you have to do is click on this structure prediction, okay, and then click on submit. But before that, I think you have to actually make sure you are logged in. You have to register to this particular site. But why the registration is required? Because this particular service or this server is have to be maintained by certain people. There needs to be certain amount of people, the bioinformatician, the computationist, all are there. They have to maintain this particular server. But how to maintain the server? They have to get paid, right? And so they have to give a, you have to provide them salary for doing their job. And how will that money come from? That money will come from the industrialist. The industrialist to actually use this server for their performance, for their job, they have to pay a certain token amount. They have to pay some money to use their server. But this is free for the academician. It is free for the students. It is free for the people who are at the academic sector, because they are not doing it for profit. They are doing it for knowledge. So they favors the knowledge growth. But the people, the industrialists, they don't favor the knowledge growth. They only want to make money. So that's why they charge this for the non-government organization or any non-academic organization. Okay, they charge this thing. So you have to actually register it. Okay. So after you register, this is the server, the site that is going to open up. So first you have to give the target name. So you can simply put in anything. So suppose if you have a protein, so suppose you have a protein. So this particular protein is actually you have to give the name of a protein. So if you simply give the name of the protein, okay, you get to see the name of the protein. You give the name of the protein. Now you have to upload the protein sequence. Now if you simply hover your pointer to this particular question mark, you get to see what this everything means. So hover your pointer to protein sequence, and it says that please enter your protein sequence using single letter amino acid code, and the length should be 27th to 1000. So suppose I am having this particular protein. This is the protein that I want to express. And now though the structure of this protein is already solved, suppose there is a protein whose structure is not solved. Okay, so obviously you have to have the FASTA sequence. You have to have the protein sequence. So suppose this is the protein sequence. So you have to copy the protein sequence and simply submit it here. Only so you are not giving the FASTA protein, only the protein sequence. Now obviously I'm going to make certain additions, make certain changes so that it's not a similar proteins. In your case, you have to find out the protein that is completely different from how it looks like. Okay. So this is how actually I am editing the structure so that it becomes a completely new protein. Okay, so like this is, you have to upload the protein sequence. You get the idea, right? Now next, if you see, there are three options for your protein modeling. The one is the TR, one is the Rosetta fold, the CM, and the ABE. Okay, this particular Rosetta fold is a very new thing. This TR Rosetta is good, but this is a new modeling, new method that they have actually given. This is the new method they have given. Okay, this is a new method. Okay, actually I also didn't know that there is a Rose TTF fold option there. Okay, so what are these options? Now let me discuss about every one of them. So this is actually a pretty new option because I actually used this particular server for my job just a week ago, but I didn't find out this particular fold. Okay, now let's see what's ABE. As I've told you, if you simply hover your pointer to this question mark, it's going to discuss every method. So what is ABE? ABE is the ab initio method, and I think I've discussed the ab initio method, right? So it's going to start from the scratch. It's not going to take a look into all the other proteins whose structures are solved. It's not going to do a homology modeling. It's only going to take the information from the sequence, and depending upon the protein, your protein sequence, your protein, the chemical and physical property of your molecule, it's going to predict the structure. Now obviously, though, ab initio method is the best method for structure prediction, because that's how the protein actually folds in our body. But still, our understanding of the protein sequence, our understanding of the protein biology, our understanding of the protein chemistry is still at the basal level. So we are yet to fully harness every detail, every nitty-gritty detail about this particular amino acid. And before we can do that, we can't predict the structure of the protein with 100% accuracy using ab initio method. Okay. So next is the CM only method, that is the comparative modeling or the homology modeling. So if you select this particular method, it's going to take a look into all the other solved structures of protein. There are several proteins whose structures are solved, right? So it's going to take a look into all the other proteins whose structures are solved, and then it's going to model your protein to find out the homology. Suppose, remember how the homology, suppose I have uploaded this particular protein, and now it's going to find out if your protein has any homology to this particular proteins or not. Okay. And how will that happen? Suppose you have uploaded this particular protein. Okay. Now see, before you get to that particular site, it was actually showing you this PDB IDs, right? So this means that this particular protein is very similar to see the vascular endothelial growth factor A, B, C, like that. So these are your homology. So suppose you find a protein which has certain homology to other proteins, then you can actually use the comparative modeling. So it's going to look at the particular database. So we're going to look at this database and try to find out the sequence similarity. So suppose if you have uploaded a particular protein which has sequence similarity to this protein, then this particular entire stretch is similar. Suppose this entire stretch is similar. Okay. And this is a solved structure. So now it will try to take a look into this particular domain, and they found out that this particular domain has the alpha helix structure. So if the sequence aligns, and if you get to see that yes, this particular portion sequence is exactly the same with your queried protein, then it is going to upload and give them a alpha helix structure. It's going to provide a alpha helix structure to that particular motif, and like that it's going to find out all the similar motif that your protein has with the solved structural proteins. And for the portions for which you don't find any homology, it's going to predict only that particular part with ab initio method. Understand? So any question till this part? No. Great. Okay. So now next we have this TR method. What is TR method? See, this particular method actually is a translated Rosetta. Now this is a pretty fast method, and how does it do? Now as you can see, it uses a deep learning based modeling method. Now what is deep learning based modeling method? That means this is the AI of this particular server. This is the artificial intelligence. Now suppose, as I have told you, each day thousands of people submits the protein structure, submits the protein sequence for structure prediction. Now let me first, before that, let me tell you about the CM method. Now see, once you have performed the CM method, several other informations come up. What are the informations? One information, it says you to upload the PDB template. That means if you already know that your molecule or your protein has a similar protein structure in the PDB database, then you can actually upload the PDB ID of that particular molecule. And these are the PDB IDs. These are the PDB IDs. See, 2FCA, 2FCI, these are the PDB IDs. And if you know that your molecule doesn't have any PDB similar structure, then you don't need to upload the molecule. It's going to self-search the whole database. It's going to self-accurately search the whole database to find out the homology. But you can actually also help this particular software. How can you help? See, there are two options. One is the open constant panel, and then you have the open fragment panel. What is the fragment panel? The fragment panel means it asks you whether you know that your molecule has any secondary structure. How would you know your molecule has any secondary structure or not? Simply by this server, the JPRED method. Remember, the JPRED method was predicting that your molecule has alpha helix nature. So suppose if you are uploading the first, you have to upload the same sequence here, then upload the same sequence there also. Why? Because if you already make a query here, it is going to share some knowledge with you that yes, this entire stretch is alpha helix in nature, this entire stretch is beta sheet in nature. Okay, so if already tells that this particular proteins are or amines are part of alpha helix, then you can actually feed that information here. How do you feed it? It has a particular option. Like first you have to see something is written there like 1MC1000. What are these? One is the amino acid code, the first amino acid. So suppose in this particular case the first amino acid is the methionine, obviously. So suppose let me take a look into this particular case. Sorry. Okay, so this is actually the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this lysine is the 11th lysine. Okay, so what we have to do, you can actually you can say that 11th lysine, then you get to say the number, the lysine, then space, then the secondary structure. And how does the secondary structure know? See, the C means coil, H means helix, and E stands for beta sheet. So if your 11th amino acid, a lysine, is a part of beta sheet, you have to give the option E, and then for beta sheet the option is 0.000 space 0.000 1.000. So for random coil the coordinate is 1 0 0, for helix it is 0 1 0, for beta sheet it is 0 0 1. This is the code to write the secondary structure. So if you already know that your molecule or a certain part of your molecule, then you can actually upload the secondary structure in this particular panel, and this is going to help your software. So rather than finding the structure of the entire sequence, it is going to know that this particular stretch has the alpha helix nature. So it's going to keep the alpha helix nature to that particular amino acids and then refold the protein around that particular section. Or in other case, suppose you have performed NMR spectroscopy, and from NMR spectroscopy you have got the idea that this particular protein is a alpha helix in nature, because in NMR we don't use the whole protein, we use a fragment of protein, and from a certain fragment it is really easy to predict whether the particular stretch is alpha helix or beta sheet using NMR. So suppose I have performed an NMR, and from NMR I already know that this particular sequence has, or this particular stretch of amino acid has the alpha helix nature. So using that information I am going to give the fragment size, because using NMR, that means that's the accurate and most experimental method. I already know it. So like that I am going to upload the secondary structure of the part that I know, because that is going to help the protein. Rather than predicting the entire structure, I am already providing some information that this is the portion or the structure of this particular molecule, and it's going to analyze the rest of the stuff. For example, suppose no one knows how the, suppose you have given a particular child some crayons and you have asked him to draw an animal. Now you are asking him to draw a dog, and suppose that particular person doesn't have no idea how a dog looks like. So what you are going to say? You are going to say that see, that dog has 4 legs, it has a short tail, that's a curled up tail, like that. So if you feed that information to the boy, he is going to know that yes, so 4 tails means the cow also has 4 legs. So it's going to look like a cow, but the size might be a bit smaller. So he or she might draw a cow with a very less small scale, so it might say it as a dog. But if that particular person have no idea that how the animal will look like, then it becomes a little bit difficult for him to picturize or draw or design that molecule, right? Or sorry, design and draw that particular animal. So these are the informations or the help that we provide the server. And you can also upload the constraint panel. What is the constraint panel? Now in constraint panel, what we give, if I simply upload a particular molecule, suppose I have already given that I already know that using NMR, I already know that these atoms are connected to one another. This particular atom is connected to this atom, whereas this atom is connected to this atom. So if I already have this kind of information, then I can actually upload that particular constraint there. Because if I upload that constraint there, no matter what, the molecule or the server is going to predict the structure and model the structure so as those contacts are maintained. so as to maintain the exact contact. So if they maintain the exact and same contact, obviously the structure is going to be much better, right? So like that you can actually upload the entire sequence, you can upload the constant panel or the fragment panel like that. Okay, and finally there is a Rosetta fold. I think this is a folding method. Just give me a little, let me take a look. Okay, so this is the new method, and how it actually differs, that I have actually I need to see, because this is a very recent development of this particular server. Okay, but whatever the idea, you got the idea, right, how to perform it. Okay, so after that what you have to do, the main thing you have to select whether you need to do it for TR Rosetta or for TR Rosetta fold or the comparative modeling or the ab initio modeling, like that. And after you've given that, you have to solve this number 3 plus 2. See, I have already solved it, the name with 5, and then simply click on submit. And if you click on submit, it's going to get deposited, and depending upon the protein sequence length, the load on server, it's going to predict the structure. Sometimes it might take 2 or 3 days, or sometimes it might give you the result within the 15 hours. So it actually depends, and when you get the result, it's going to, as you have provided the email, it's going to mail you that your job is ready, and they're going to give you a link. You have to click on that link and that page will open up, and then there will be download option where you can download your model structure. Now I have already modeled certain molecules. Okay, so let me discuss the models as such. I have already modeled certain molecules using this Rosetta. Now we have to analyze the structure. How to analyze the structure and how the models are actually given. So as I've told you, sometimes it gives you 1 model, 2 model, 3 model or 4 model, depending upon what type of you have selected and what type of model it has done. So all the models are actually I have downloaded. So let's open up one molecule. So to visualize the model, you have to have installed the PyMol software. Okay, I have given you the software, right, the PyMol. So you have to have installed that particular software. So now if I click on the molecule, it's going to open up. And now since I need to analyze the structure, I need to open all the molecules in a single file. How to do it? Click on file, click on open, and then simply select all these models. I'm selecting this 2, 3, 4, and suppose this last is the average model. Okay, so I've selected all the models. So since all the models are highlighted, all the models you can see. But before getting into the model detail, let us understand how this PyMol works. Okay, so in this particular case, this is the PyMol. Okay, so in this particular case, you can visualize the molecule that you have modeled, the structure of the molecule that you have modeled. Okay, this is only a visualization software. Okay, like the AVI, you have a movie software to watch movies, you have a software to hear songs or listen to the songs, right? So like that, it's actually a server. So how you can use it? Now see, once I have uploaded a structure, I need to see the sequence of this particular protein. So how to do that? See, at the end, at the right bottom corner, there's an option called S. There's an option called S, right bottom corner. If you click on S, it's going to show up the sequence of your molecule. See, the sequence of the molecules have opened up. And the sequence that I select here, those sequences are going to get highlighted in this particular panel. But the next thing is that how to rotate or move around PyMol. So there are various options. First option is simply the right mouse button. If you hold your right mouse button and then simply you drag in and drag out your mouse, and it's going to zoom in and zoom out the protein structure. You can zoom in and zoom out. See? So no, but you have to keep on hold your left mouse button. And after that, if you select the middle mouse button, hold it, or the mouse wheel and hold it, you can rotate the structure. You can translate the structure. Sorry, not rotate. You can translate the structure. So suppose I have zoomed in. So I have zoomed in till that, like that. So now I can hold the middle mouse button and you can simply translate the molecule like that to make sure the molecule, you can see each and every fragment. And with the help of the left mouse button, if you hold your left mouse button, you can actually rotate the molecule. You can rotate and find out different angles and different ways to visualize and find out this particular structure, protein structure. Okay, that's how this thing actually works. Okay, so now as I've told you, simply click on the S option again to simply let go the sequence, or if you click on S option, it's going to show you the sequence of your molecule. Okay, now beside this particular thing there are other options, like you have A button, then beside the, see in the top right hand corner, you beside the name of the protein there is an option called ASHLC, like that. So what is S? So S is going to, is a short form for show. So that is how you actually visualize the molecule, that depends on S. And what is H? H stands for height. So how do they occur? Suppose if you click on show, and now can you are only able to see the backbone of the molecule. You can't see the entire amino acid structure. Can you see the amino acid? Can you see the amino acid side chains and all? No, you can't. Why? Because those are not marked. How to show it? Click on S and click on lines. If you click on lines, everything will be visualized in lines. Everything will be visualized in lines. Okay, and then you can actually visualize the not only the backbone but also the side chain and everything. And in this particular case, the blue portions are the nitrogens. The yellow, the white stands for hydrogen molecule. The red stands for the oxygen molecule. So that means this particular is the CONH bond, right? This is the NH and this is the C double bond O. Okay, CONH peptide bond. Whereas the yellow stands for the sulfur, that means the disulfide bond. Whereas the green stands for your carbon backbone. So if you click on show as lines, the entire molecule will be shown as lines. And if you click on show as sticks, it's going to be visualized as show as sticks. The sticks are thicker than the lines. The sticks are simply thicker than the lines. Okay, so suppose, so this is the yellow portion is actually the sulfur. Sometimes when you keep on lines, click on lines, it becomes, it's really thin, right? And it becomes really difficult for you to visualize. So click on sticks to make them more fat like structure. Okay, so how to hide the sticks? Again, simply click on hide and click on sticks. See, the sticks are hidden. Again, how to hide the lines? Click on hide, click on lines, it's going to get hidden. So now I want to see it as ribbons. So if I click on show as ribbons, this is how the molecule is looking like, as ribbons. I am going to hide the ribbon and I am going to show it as cartoon. So cartoon is the best method to visualize your molecule. So if I select cartoon, see now I can actually visualize and understand the structure of the secondary structure of the molecule. This is the alpha helix. This is the alpha helix. Whereas this particular portions are the coils in the protein structure. Okay, but apart from that, now since if I simply start show the lines, so this is the protein, entire protein structure, right? But how does the topology of your protein looks like? How is the topology of the protein? To visualize the entire surface or topology, you can select, you can click on show and click on surface. So now this is how the proteins are going to look like in your body when you crystallize it. This is how the protein looks like, exactly like this. You can't identify the A helix, you can't identify the beta sheet. This is how the protein lives in your body. So the amino acids that are present at the surface are this amino acid that are there to interact. So since this is a very small molecule, the protein that I have modeled is a very small protein, so it is every atom is actually solvent accessible. Okay, so this is how the protein actually looks like. But see, when I click on surface, I can't see the secondary structure. I can only see this entire topology but not the secondary structure, right? And see, in this particular topology, the red region stands for the oxygen atoms, the blue stands for the nitrogen. Okay, and this is really important to see the protein contacts, because suppose if you want to design a ligand to bind to this particular groove, so this is one of the groove, right, where the molecular ligand might bind. Okay, so if you want your ligand to bind to this groove, obviously you can't use oxygen and other atoms. Why? Because the oxygen is going to repel one another. You can't use the negatively charged residues there. You have to use some positively charged residues so that positive negative interact and you get to see a higher affinity. Okay, but as I have told you, if I click on surface, I am not able to see the entire secondary structure. So how to make sure that I can understand and see both of them? There is an option called mesh, and if you click on mesh, see, you can also get to see the total topology, but you can also visualize the secondary structure within also. This is actually like a transparent 3D model, right? The transparent 3D model. Okay, So using mesh, we can actually see the entire topology also and the 3D structure. Now remember why the protein is protruding here, because the side chain is protruding here. So though the protein backbone is still this part, the effect of protein is up to this particular domain, this particular end. Okay, that is how you actually visualize the proteins and all, right? And using hide, you can actually hide the other thing. Okay, so next you have the option called level. What is level? The level, we can actually level each amino acid. So suppose if I know, suppose I don't know what this amino acid is, so how to see? So if I highlight this amino acid, see that particular amino acid in the sequence get it highlighted, so it is a lysine. Now obviously I can understand it from the secondary structure, but if you are not that much into protein chemistry and all, then it will be little difficult for you to predict the amino acid. But it is advisable that you will know by heart the amino acids structures. You can whenever I say a structure, you should be able to draw the structure, right? So make sure you know the entire structure by you memorize it by memorize it. And so like that, so see the amino acid that I select, that particular portions get highlighted. So suppose I need to see the only this particular stretch. Let me hide all the lines. So suppose I need to study only this particular portion. The rest of the portions are not interested to me. Okay, because this particular portion is actually the one which is making an interaction with the ligand. So how to only see this particular portion? So see, if I select a particular portion, the other portion get highlighted as select. What is SELE is a short form for select. That means these are the amino acids that I have selected. And now if I click on S between the select and click on sticks, now see, only the amino acid that I have selected, only those portions are getting highlighted, while the rest of the portions are not getting in a stick format. And that is sometimes required for to make or analyze the structure. Okay, so you can also click on levels and click on residues, and if you do it, every residues are getting, see, you can actually identify and submitting the residue number to each of the amino acid. Okay, and finally the other option that you have is the C, that is the color option. So you can actually color them by element. So if I do this, that means the entire backbone, the carbon is colored with magenta, the oxygen with red, hydrogen with white, and the nitrogen with blue. Okay, or you can also color it by other elements, right? Okay, or you can calculate or color them by chain. Sometimes the protein like hemoglobin, they have multiple chain. So if you have a protein with multiple chain, like we have shown in VEGF, right, there are multiple chain. So if you have protein with multiple chain, to identify different chains in a different color, you can click on color by chain, and each of the other chains are going to be highlighted. So one chain will be there in green color, other chain will be in blue color, other chain in yellow color, so that you are able to distinguish between each different chains. Or you can also calculate on structure or color them by secondary structure. So in this method, in secondary structure, the helix is given a red, the sheet are given a yellow, while the loops are given a green color. Since I don't have any helix in this particular structure, there is no yellow, but you can see the red and the blue. Or you can also color them differently with this particular thing like that. So it actually differs upon your choice. Or you can also color the entire thing differently. You can provide the, suppose you have red and there are different shades of red. So you can color this molecule with red, suppose. Or you can color it according to the magenta, the cyan. You can give any color you want. You can match it with your clothes. Okay, like that. Now because sometimes also you require the color for publication, you need to give a very lucrative color so that each of the proteins are actually highlighted. You can get to see everything like that. So that's how you actually have to manipulate the entire structure, and you have to make it more colorful, more eye pleasing. So that is for the representation purpose. So you can actually have this color by for the representation purpose. Okay, so now we are coming down to the other. So of these three of them we know it. Okay, so now what about the action button? Now remember, as I've told you, there are several proteins for which we color it by element. Okay, now there are several proteins which have and the proteins that you are identifying or downloading from the server, they lack the hydrogen atoms. Why? Because in X-ray structure and all, the hydrogens are really left off. So sometimes the protein might have no hydrogen atoms, or sometimes they might have hydrogen atoms. And sometimes the hydrogen atoms also causes some problem. What kind of problems? Now if you have no hydrogen atom, and suppose you have devised a ligand that is going to make a hydrogen bond. So if you have no hydrogen atom, how you are going to form a hydrogen bond? You can't form a hydrogen bond, and these hydrogens are sometimes required or essential to form hydrogen bond with the water molecules also. But if you intend to perform a molecular dynamic simulation, then the molecular dynamic simulation takes a lot of time to process. And if you have hydrogens, it is going to take up more time because it has to process all the other hydrogens too, right? So for that reason, sometimes to speed up the process, people sometimes leaves this hydrogens. They leave this particular hydrogens away. They hide the hydrogens and they provides a molecular dynamic simulation of the entire structure apart from the hydrogens to shorten the time. So how can we do that? Now see, under A button there is an option called A and there is an option called hydrogen. Now if you click on hydrogens, you get to see the remove hydrogen. If I click on remove, see the every hydrogens are actually removed from the structure. Every hydrogens are removed. Let me show it again, sorry. See, it have hydrogens, all the other white hydrogens. But if I click on action button, go to hydrogen, click on remove, all the hydrogens are removed. Now you can also add the hydrogens. Sometimes if you don't have hydrogens, you can add the entire hydrogens, or you can simply add only the polar hydrogens. Why? Because the polar hydrogens are the one which are going to make a interaction with the molecules. So if you can also add the polar hydrogens only, because they are the ones that are going to interact with the ligand or interact with the water molecules, and not the non-polar hydrogens are not going to interact with the water molecules, right? So it's better to leave them off. And if you have enough time to calculate or make the empty simulation, you can also add every molecule, add all the hydrogens. Now since I have 4 structures, I have to analyze all these structures, right? So how are the structures different from one another? So this is the first option, the first model. Okay, now in this particular protein, this is the protein. The 2 alpha helix are actually parallel to one another. What about the second model? The second model is different. How it is different? It is actually 90 degree to one another. The third model, it is also parallel to one another. It's not exactly parallel, sorry. It is also showing a 90 degree difference, 90 degree to one another. But this middle portion, it has a slight alpha helix tendency. This particular has a slight alpha helix tendency, which the rest of the proteins didn't have. The fourth model also had this kind of structure. It is parallel structure, right? So now if I see all these 4 models, it becomes really difficult for you to understand because they are not aligned together. So we need to align them with one another. How to align them? So now simply click on the molecule, the A button of the molecule which you need to align, and there is an option called align. What to do? There's a under align option, there's a click on 2 molecule and then with model 1. So now see, the second molecule is actually aligned with the first model. They're actually aligned with the first model. Okay, and see, this yellow stretches are the differences. These yellow stretches are difference. That means this glycine was earlier here, but in this particular case, this is where the glycine is. This is the difference between the each atoms. Okay, so let it go. Okay, so again click on third model, align 2 molecule to the first model. So it also got aligned with the first model. See, it's also got aligned with the first model. Now with the fourth model, final model, align to model 1. So now you can actually align every molecules together. All the molecules are actually aligned with one another. Now it becomes much more easier to visualize and analyze the structure. So now let me see the first 2 models. Now the first 2 models are not exactly same. See, this entire stretch is alpha helix, that I know for sure. But the position of the alpha helix is different. In this particular case, they're actually parallel to one another, and in this particular case, it is actually 90 degree. So if I open the second model, now see the second model and third models are actually similar to one another. They have a 90 degree turn, they have a 90 degree turn, but the only difference is that the third model has a alpha helix tendency at the loop region, which no other structure provided. So in this particular case, if you upload these 2 models have similar structure, right? So like this, you can actually understand and get to know what are the structures. For example, none of the model actually predicts a alpha helix in the loop region, right? So I'm going to reject this particular case because the three of the models are predicting that this is not the entire structure, right? So I'm going to remove the third model and I'm going to select only the first two models, and this is the average model, right? This is the average model, and the average model is also predicting that these are actually aligned or parallel to one another. See, that is how the alpha, the average model actually looks like. So I'm going to select the first model as my, or the average model as your average protein model. The average model is actually the average of all the four structures. So you can actually go with the average model, or you can get to select any other model. Now obviously if the protein is a large molecule, then it becomes a little bit difficult for you to analyze, and we have to perform any other checks. You have to find out the each amino acid, how are they different from one another, how could the model looks like, and then you have to perfectly and find out select a particular model with which you can progress and perform other experiments. Okay, now apart from that, there are also other things that you can do. So suppose this is the protein that you have. Okay, so now you intend to find out the polar contacts, the hydrogen bond between these particular proteins. How do you find out? Again, click on A, and now see there's an option called find, and under find you have an option called polar contacts. Now click on within selection. Now see, it is going to show this all white yellow streaks are the polar bond, the hydrogen bond that your molecule or this particular protein has with other interaction. But some of the hydrogen bonds are in the air, right? It is actually not in air. Why? Because I have not shown the entire structure. Since the side chains are hidden, it was feeling like it is in air. Now see, once I open the side chains, you get to see the options. So this is one of the hydrogen bond between this oxygen and this nitrogen or hydrogen. You get to see this is the other polar contacts that this particular molecule has. So these are the different polar contacts. So if you are uploading it with a particular other molecule, then you also get to see the polar contacts, or you can also try to find out any contacts within 3OA. Okay, so suppose I have to hide these things. Let me hide the lines, and suppose I now need to find out the polar contacts or any contacts between 3 or 5A and all, and so it doesn't have any other contacts, those are not highlighted. Okay, it's usually you are able to find out the polar contacts best. So suppose you have any molecule with a ligand molecule, you try to find out the polar contact between this molecule and ligand molecule, you can find out the hydrogen bond between this particular two molecules. Okay, now suppose you have this particular protein. Now you need to find out the protein contact potential, or the area in which you can actually dock the protein. How to do that? Click on A and then simply come down and click on generate. Then under generate you have the option called vacuum electrostatics, and under vacuum electrostatics there's an option called protein contact potential. Click on it and see this is the protein contact potential of your protein. So what is protein contact potential? It actually determines which portion of the proteins is going to interact with which portion of the protein. For example, this particular deep blue section is actually the electropositive section. So obviously if it is binding to other protein or other ligand, it is going to interact with the electronegative domain, right? Because if you get to see that if two proteins are interacting with one another, but they are interacting with electropositive domain and electropositive domain, then you know that that particular interaction is not a good interaction, because the electropositive domain can't interact with electropositive domain. They're going to repel one another. So while devising a ligand or seeing out the protein contact potential, you have to make sure that the blue region is interacting with the red regions, or the red region is the molecule with the electronegative domain. So if you need to target this particular domain with a ligand, make sure you design a ligand with nitrogens and other positively charged residues, so that they have a good high affinity bonding. Okay, so these are the different things that you can actually perform with this particular server, but not that all. There are also other things that you can perform. What are the other things? Suppose you need to find out the distance between two residues. Okay, for example, suppose, let me highlight it. Suppose you need to find out the distance between, suppose you have added a ligand. Now you need to find out the distance between this particular protein or this residue and this residue. How far are they separate? How to find out? See, under wizard, at the topmost there is an option called wizard. Under wizard there is an option called measurement. And if you click on measurement, then you can actually have to see, you have to first select the first atom between which you want to calculate the distance. So suppose this is the atom that I want to select. So this is the first atom I have selected. Now you have to click the second atom. I have clicked on second atom. Now see, it is showing you a distance of 11.4. That means these two atoms are separated by a distance of 11.4 angstrom. I need to find out distance between these two amino acids. See, they are separated by a distance of 4.5 angstrom. So like this, you can also check the distance between two atoms, distance between a ligand and your protein. Okay, using this particular software. See, 6.0. Now usually two atoms, if they are separated within a distance of 4 angstrom, they are at a distance of hydrogen bond. They can have van der Waals interaction and all. The greater the distance, the less the interaction between them, the less the contact between them. Okay, and like this, you can select the distance between any two atoms. And if you have made any different, suppose I want to select this atom and now I want to select this particular atom, but rather than selecting this atom, I have selected this atom. So now it's going to show up this, but I don't want that distance, so I need to delete it. How to delete it? See, there is an option called delete last object. As soon as you clicked on wizard, this measurement panels opened up, and there is an option called delete last object. So you click on delete last object, the last object is deleted. Again click on delete last object, the last object is deleted. Okay, and after you are done, suppose you don't need to find out anything else, then simply click on done. Then it is done. The measurement panel closes up, and make sure you have the measurement panel closed up, because if not, suppose I need to, and if you are by any chance you mistakenly selecting this particular residue, see, it's going to try to find out the distance between all the residues that you have selected, and these are the distance, and it shows all the different kind of interactions. So that's why generally need to delete all the objects. Okay, all the objects, and make sure after that click on either delete all measurement and click on done. And after clicking on done, you can actually click on a different part of it. Now see, it's not going to get select or show the distance between them. Okay, so this is how you can also use this particular PyMouse software to find out the distance between your ligand protein, analyze the protein structure, find out the distance between two residues. And suppose you have a protein that have mutated, and the mutation causes a slight fluctuation in the protein structure. So now you can also find out the distance between that two fluctuation point and find out the difference between the, and compare it with a wild type one. And if you find that yes, the compared with wild type there is a difference, then you know that these two residues are actually in the not in the same domain, and like that. Okay, and finally, if you need to save the structure, there are ways to save the molecule. How to do? There is an option called file, and then under file you have an option. Suppose you need to save the image, say there is a export image as, and then click on PNG, and now click on save PNG image as, and then you have to give the name of the protein and save it, and it's going to get saved. But you can also change the background. Now suppose sometimes the black background is not that visualizable, so click on display, there is an option called background. Okay, now you can click on white to make the background white. And generally for publication, people prefer the white background, so make sure you have a white background in place. And then you now click on the molecule, save export image as PNG, save PNG image as, click on, suppose I'm saving it as desktop demo, and then click on save. Okay, and now see the demo PNG is saved. So this is the molecule, or the picture of the molecule that I have saved. Okay, so you can use this molecule or use this picture for your thesis part and the other part. Okay, and also obviously sometimes if you have a large portion, suppose this is the protein portion and you don't need to save the whole protein, you only need to save the C-terminal till the 16 part, you can also select that particular part. How to do it? So select the region that you need to select, click on file, click on export molecule, and then simply from the drop down menu click on select, that is ACLE, that means the atom that you have selected. Now click on save. Okay, now suppose I need to go to desktop, I'm going to give the name, click on the save the as a PDB structure and click on the name as demo PDB. Okay, now since I already have a demo PDB, I'm going to overwrite it, and now let's check the demo PDB. Now see, this is the this is the first fragment of the protein, only that particular fragment. So this is the whole protein, and this is the, I have selected only this fragment. So this is this particular fragment, the molecule that I have selected. So if you need to cut off a particular fragment, if you need to select only the active site of that molecule, only the functional domain of a protein, not the entire protein, you can obviously select the sequence and save it accordingly. Understand? So that's how you can actually use this particular software to make your present your molecule. Now for saving the molecule, you can also save it using the ray option. If you click on RAY, it is going to make sure your molecule or the structure or the picture is very good, but the ray takes up the entire RAM. It takes up a huge computation processing power, and that actually hangs my computer, so I'm not clicking on ray. So once only when you need to save the picture, type in ray and click on enter, and then after the picture is getting saved, rather than clicking, don't click anywhere else, because if you click anywhere else after the ray, that particular picture is going to vanish and you have to again type in ray. So after typing in ray, all you have to do is the picture is made, and after that it's going to take a few minutes depending on your computer speed. Click on file, click on save export images, and don't click anywhere on the screen, because after typing in ray, if you click anywhere, the ray is gone. You again have to type in ray. Okay, so that's all for today. So any question, any problem, any lack in understanding and all? Okay, I think the answer is no. You have understand everything. So do one thing. So use this software or this server to predict the model your particular proteins, and then you can use that particular protein to design a ligand or target, and then finally analyze everything using this PyMol software. Okay. Okay, so thank you. That will be all, since we don't have any